What is going on, my good people? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Say That Podcast. And y'all know the drill. Don't say this, say that. I want to give a big shout out to everyone who tuned in to my last episode with Justin Clancy. And I got to say, it is one of my favorite interviews I've ever done with any person. So if you haven't watched it already, please go do so. It's available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify, as is the rest of the Say That catalog. Binge it, watch it, and love it. You know, that's what I'm going to start saying. And if you haven't already, please go and follow me on Instagram, REPETE617. I know it's a little fast there, and the podcast Instagram is say_that_pod. And also, before I introduce today's guest, as you can see, I'm wearing new Say That merch. I want to give a big shout out to Noble of the Museum TV with his company A&M Embroidery. He did a hat, he did a shirt, and I have also shorts available. So if you're interested, and if you are a former guest, I would love for you to cop some merch. I also have hoodies available as well, but we'll save those for the fall. Please hit me up. You know, if you have my number, text me. But if not, Instagram's perfectly okay. Give me a size, what articles of clothing you want, and what color you want, and we'll get to it. You know what I'm saying? Let's support. I want to see these more out here. You know, we worked very hard on these. They say, don't say this, say that in the back as well, but I'm not going to turn around because that's a lot of effort that I don't want to do. Right. But today, ladies and gentlemen, and I got to say, I'm very excited for this one. This man, if you watch the Say That Cypher, had arguably the best verse on it. And it's someone that you wouldn't expect for him to have that verse. You know, because if you know his music, you know he stepped a little out of his bag and into a new one. But be that as it may, please give a warm Say That welcome to Julian Mendoza. How we doing?
I'm doing better after that introduction.
Yeah, I was thinking on the way out, like, I gotta let people know, like, you know, because literally, you know, as we're planning it, you know, because obviously the first one was a collaborative effort between me and Mike, and he's like, you know, obviously you want Cam and Z because of AOA, but it's like, we need one more. And he's like, dude, Julian. I'm like, all right, I'm with it. You know what I'm saying? I've only heard you sing, so when I heard that, I was like, holy shit!
Yeah, I started out with bars more so than anything, so it was nice. I always look at those things as sort of getting back to my roots as a songwriter. Yeah. I used to write these like joke raps that were a little more than a joke in in high school and stuff, and then I transitioned into just like broader tastes of music.
So now I gotta ask, what made you make that transition and kind of to the soulful things we hear today from you?
I think it's just everything correlates with what I enjoy listening to, which shouldn't come as a surprise. I already had a strong basis for that transition, I guess you could say, throughout my upbringing. Believe it or not, I didn't grow up with any hip hop. Wow. My family, I shouldn't generalize like that, but my mom was not the biggest fan of hip hop growing up because she only knew a very limited amount, and the limited amount she did know, she didn't like. And my dad, because my mom didn't like it a whole lot, wouldn't play it a whole lot in the house. Yeah. I grew up on, old school R&B and oldies, like old stuff like the Temptations.
Oh, wow, okay. All right, Bee Gees?
Not as much Bee Gees, not as much like disco-y stuff.
Okay.
But a little bit.
Like Soul Town type of thing.
Huge
right?
on like Motown stuff. Motown stuff.
Yeah.
As well as actually like classic rock. My mom loves classic rock. I grew up on John Denver and folks
Thank God
like
I'm
that.
A country boy. Hell yeah.
I'm a little all over the place. That's for sure. I might surprise you here. Some folky music. And then jazz too. I'd be remiss to neglect saying that I grew up on a lot of jazz. Miles Davis was a hero of mine. I started my musical journey playing trumpet.
Rest in peace, Chuck Mangione, by the way.
Yes, absolutely. We're losing a lot of lot of folks.
Last week sucked. I'm not going to even mention Hulk Hogan because fuck him. Honest to God. But as
I don't have to.
As a wrestling fan, you have to. As a diehard wrestling fan, that's one thing that I've watched my whole life. Is it sad? I guess, but I'm someone who's like, all right, dude. Like, I grew up on John Cena, The Rock, and like Steve Austin. I'll take those guys all time, any day over Hulk Hogan. I get it was the 80s. I get it was what it was. But, all right, let's run down this list real quick. All right. He wasn't good in the ring. He did the same... that's what I've been telling people. He did the same 5 moves every match. It was like body slam, clothesline, leg drop, and some other shit, and that was it, right? That Andre the Giant body slam, he did that like 20 different times, all right? I think that one of the first times was at Shea Stadium 5 years before the actual WrestleMania body slam happened. And also, he was just a shit person. Like, I guess, like, yeah, he put wrestling on the map, but like, okay, like, it's here now. We have other stars. It's like, I just don't get that thinking of like, oh, this wouldn't be here if it wasn't for this guy and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, but like, that doesn't change my opinion of him.
It's
and
pretty
this
funny.
is the best thing. I had someone tell me that like, oh, Hulk Hogan had his flaws. I'm sorry, but like, the racist shit he did, racism isn't a flaw. All right, it's just being a shitty person.
He just had a little oopsie here and
yeah,
there.
a little oopsie here and there. Crushing unions, burying different people backstage because he wanted the opportunity and said, oh, total flaws. No, a flaw is if, like, you're lazy or, like, you just have a bad habit. Racism ain't a flaw. And that's why I was like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? Yeah. I literally, I could go in this whole spiel, but I'm not going to. But that's what I will say about that. But rest in big peace to the legend Ozzy Osbourne. That really fucking hurt. Yeah. I'm a huge Ozzy fan, and that fucking hurt. I'm getting a tattoo of him soon. Oh, yeah. As I already planned on it before he even passed away. But big rest in peace to Ozzy Osbourne. So I describe your music as an abundance of soul and spirit. And it's something that you do so effortlessly. And especially with this new release, your latest album release, Daybreak Even, you made music that matches the title. I feel like I'm transported to a world where I'm sitting on a beach at daybreak or even at sunset. I'm kicking back, I got my sunglasses on, sipping a nice drink. I feel like life is good when I listen to like your music and more specifically this album. So is that kind of a testament to like your ability with storytelling? And was there any real central message to this album you were trying to get at?
I appreciate that, and it's nice to hear that from the listener standpoint because of how I approached this project in particular. When I wrote it, for the most part, I'm going to use the track "Sun Up, Sun Down," which is one of the tracks on the album, to sort of epitomize the rest of it. It's actually the first track that I wrote from the album, but I think because of that, it embodies sort of what I was going for pretty well. I think I described it previously as a song that's written from the perspective of like that 1 hour in a day right before bed where you're sort of reflecting on like, where has the day gone? And the week has been so hard. I've been working so hard. Maybe I didn't have time to cook a proper meal and got fast food, 3 times this week. And, I'm treating my body like shit and treating my mental like shit. I'm in this hour where I'm taking a breath, making music, maybe just doing what I want to do. But also, not going to sugarcoat my life right now. Even though this 1 hour is sort of like a reprieve for me, there's a lot that I have to get in order. So I like that sort of motif of like sitting on a beach and relaxing and just sort of like doing your thing, because in a way it is that sort of like eye within the storm. And if you want to circle back a little more directly to the question of my songwriting process and how I approach songwriting in terms of things that come naturally, because of what I was going for in terms of a message, I, to be honest, approached making this album from embracing my comfort zone rather than trying to push it as I did with Beneath My Wings. I appreciate it. And it's like...
That's a great way of like putting that in perspective.
Thank you. It's something where it's maybe a hot take to people because you always say, challenge yourself, try to do something new, try to, add on to who you already are. And that's all valid. I do that all the time. I'm not the greatest rapper or singer in the world. So every time I step in the booth, that's stepping out of my comfort zone in itself. But in terms of creating like a soundscape, I looked at this as considerably less experimental than Beneath My Wings, or at least going down fewer avenues. With this one, with Daybreak Even, I wanted to create a hip-hop album that had these moments in it, maybe, that were like, I almost call them glitchy, or like, a fleeting departure, like, the end of Steeples, for example, when it drops into like an EDM, like dark, spacey EDM drop. That's sort of unexpected for what the rest of the song was. And then, I even think of like the beginning of Drown, which is the final track featuring Joe Saza and Mona Veli.
Shout out to them.
Where, shout out to them. They're
two incredible
my
artists.
absolute favorites in the scene. Like, I cannot stress enough
Just
how much I love
dynamos,
them.
at their craft.
Super dynamos. But like I started with like this sort of like dramatic, beautiful "Don't let me," and then I cut out abruptly. Joe Saza sort of cuts me off, and he goes right into sort of like this like it totally shifts the scene. Like you're blasted from one asteroid to another. So I guess that's all to say that I wanted to do something that felt like going about maybe not the mundane, but what was regular to me, and then having moments that throw you for a loop or sort of like break the monotony, sort of like how I feel, on these days where like I'm going through the motions, and then I might have like a glimmer of joy or something that surprises me. So hopefully that came through in the writing.
Absolutely, and I think you got to start doing TED Talks, because the way you just described this album was like, holy shit. It was just so in depth, and you're using such like eloquent words, and like I could tell that like it comes from like a poetry background. It's obviously, if you're an artist, you're a poet in a sense.
For sure.
Song lyrics and poetry go hand in hand, but just the way you're able to take me and transport it into like your mind and being like, hey, this is actually the way I like to do things on this specific album, is like, whoa. And I love how you said that, like, I'm in my comfort zone, because while it is cliche to say step out of it and you do want to try different stuff, there's nothing wrong with just, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Right? So what's the whole point of like, unless you really want to challenge yourself, absolutely. I'm all for people like doing that. But if you're good at something and you keep doing it album after album, and each album is better than the last one, you really don't have to step out of your comfort zone. You know what I mean? You're good at this. So why not keep running with it?
Yeah, it's I like to toe the line, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
And there will always be elements of my comfort zone present within my albums, because that's what makes me me. It's my comfort zone is a comfort zone because I've developed that as part of my character as a person and as an artist. For this one, I think it was more so within that pocket, per the intent of what I was trying to get at. But I am gonna keep people on their toes for what's coming next. I'm gonna half agree with you with the if it ain't broke, don't fix it approach.
Okay.
And you'll have to see where it goes from there for me.
Absolutely, and I'm excited to listen to it. But like you had mentioned, Beneath My Wings, we are around 2 years removed from your last album already. And you had mentioned on Turntable Teachers that there were nearly, 40, I believe it was, people that were a part of that album, whether it was just vocals or instruments or whatever the case may be. First of all, how many people were involved on Daybreak Even? Obviously, maybe a little less. But secondly, how do you normally scout your talent when you want to make an album?
For sure. I'm glad you asked this question, because this sort of ties into the comfort zone thing a lot. Yeah. With Beneath My Wings, because I was out of my comfort zone in a variety of circumstances, I enlisted a bunch of help where it was within their comfort zone, any given song that I'd featured them on, or at least something where I saw the potential to take them out of their comfort zone and make them comfortable. Like I'd have, an indie pop singer that I thought had a really soulful voice on a soul-oriented song. And we were all out of our comfort zones, but it seemed natural. But I guess all in all, it was just sort of to enlist the people that I thought could bring something that was a bit of a reach for me to life in a well-executed way. Because I was more comfortable with this album, and because this one was more sort of, I guess, in a way, my personal story at this particular moment in time, rather than more of an abstraction. Right. I was way more introverted is the word that I use. So I think it's fewer than 20 people this time, which is fewer than half.
Yeah.
That less than half of what was on Beneath My Wings. That being said, I couldn't have done it without these folks. I had, a handful of producers, most of whom I've worked with previously, if not all of them, and a few features who I was just like, they just got to be on here because of the role they're playing in my life right now musically. You know, the artists who are featured on this album, they have been my reprieve for some time. Joe Saza, his album, you know, this past year that he released really put a battery in my back in a lot of ways. And, you know, I'd listen to it on long walks, and it would push my steps forward. And I was like, this guy's giving me energy. You know, he's got to be on this album. And, you know, that's what happened after I asked him for the feature. You know, I think that just epitomizes who he is. But, you know, even before that, listening to his singles and seeing him at, you know, rap competitions locally and stuff like that, like that's what really sort of had me, you know, going in that respect. Nice. You know, same thing with Mona Valley and some of the collaborators who are returning, you know, familiar faces who you might know. You know?
Yeah. And kind of the third part of this question, you know, 2 years on, how do you believe this album is holding up, or we'll say aging, in a way, for you?
For me, I hope it almost ages poorly, because this album is meant to sound exasperated. And I don't want to be exasperated anymore. I don't want to be exhausted anymore. I wrote this as something that I could relate to when I'm feeling like a little stuck. And I'm already sort of easing out of that. And I think from a sonic standpoint, like of course, like I hope that this is going to sound good musically, you know, going forward. And I think it's going to, at least to my taste. I honestly can't speak to anybody else, and I certainly don't write to adhere to what's trending. Yeah. People have called me an old soul for that in the past, for better or for worse. Yeah. But, you know, I'm hoping that it's something that can be evergreen sonically. But, you know, I've been saying to, you know, anybody who will listen, that I hope the message of this becomes outdated for me, to be honest. And I'm, even sonically, I think right now, excited for the next chapter, because it's all sort of bundled together at this point. And it's certainly, I'm not downplaying my album, being like, oh, just skip this album, like it's gonna phase out anyways. Right. I think it's worth the listen. I'm very, very proud of it.
I mean, even 2 years later, you could still hear the hard work and dedication you put into it.
For sure. Thank you. It's just one of those things where it's like, I'm going into it cognizant that this is going to be a phase, and you know, life just moves in phases, just like every other project I've done. It's like, I hope people enjoy it for, you know, time and time again, but it's not meant to stay here forever in terms of where you know, the world is sitting.
And I think that's one of the cool things about you, you know, speaking to you kind of in a more one-on-one intimate setting, is you're very comfortable with how you're describing your music, and you're not like holding back any like thoughts you may have, where people, I guess you could say, they may lie about their music in a sense, be like, oh yeah, all my stuff's gas or all this stuff, but you're very honest about how you make your music, but also how you want your music to kind of be consumed, I guess is an appropriate word to say. And you rarely see that. And it makes people want to listen more, instead of like, you know, like you say, you're not saying don't go listen to Beneath My Wings. Go listen to it, but understand what time we're in now, and understand how much better things are going to be. Because, you know, a lot of people are very critical of their old stuff. Yeah, and it's fair. Sure. You know, it's like I said, I'm critical of all my old podcast episodes. Quite frankly, I think some of them stink. You know, but where I'm at right now, where you're at, like where everyone is at, that's what you got to believe in. That's what's the now. You know, it's good to actually go back and listen and say like, oh yeah, this does suck, but you can hear everything get better. And not like I say, not saying you suck, but like saying how you describe it, like this is how I evolve sonically and musically.
Yeah,
you know?
I'm definitely more of actually, literally just this past week, I've been having this conversation with a couple of different people, but I'm so much more of like a journey person than I am like any current destination. Not even because it's like I like the feeling of progress more than I like the feeling of being great, which is true. Another perhaps hot take, I like the feeling of how far I've come rather than where I am, but also just by virtue of, like I said before, we live life in, you know, phases, and today is not going to be the same as what's to come, for better or for worse. Yeah. But I also wanted to respond to what you had said about Where is my thought going to be at? I guess I'll just say this.
Don't say this. But,
Say
technically,
that.
yeah.
Say that.
I guess, yeah, just say that.
Let me just say that.
Yeah.
Damn, you really gagged me.
I'm sorry. No, I had to do it. It was like, no, I'm sorry. I don't get that opportunity a lot. So it's
my God. You were quick with it, too. You were ready to say that.
Well, you see, the funny thing is, and not to get off topic about it, but when people, when my friends, they'll be saying, let me just say this, in my head, it's like a tick now. It's like, automatically, don't say this. Like that. I try to get it flow more. But I'm sorry if you lost the train of thought, but...
No, you're good.
Yeah.
Mike, you're gonna have to cut around all this.
Yeah. No,
it's my fault for losing the train of thought, but I do have it now. In terms of just the unfiltered communication that I have talking about my art, that is the privilege of having absolutely nothing to lose with this. And I say that being somebody who has taken all of the pressure off of myself to be any sort of commercially successful as an artist. It's one of those things where it just doesn't have the payoff for me to push in that direction.
Right.
That's not to say, if great things, come to me because I'm working very hard, which I am, and putting out good art. That's not to say that, I'll shy away from those things and that I wouldn't accept, whatever fortune may fall my way. But this is one thing that I think, one of few things, very few things that I think I was right about from the jump in terms of starting music was that, I didn't want to do this with expectations that I'll make it anywhere. And I still approach it like that. And it has not one day in my life veered me away from working as hard as somebody who does. I think I work just as hard in my own way, perfecting my craft, or at least bettering my craft, or bettering how I view my craft, than anybody. I just I write music constantly. I'm singing in the car constantly. I think singing in the car has value.
Absolutely.
I think
I sing at home.
Yeah.
Sing in the shower.
I think
kidding me?
any moment that you fill with music is supremely valuable as any type of creative. Even when I go to work, I couldn't work anywhere without music. That's why I am at the job I'm at right now. I work at a music venue where I'm, constantly absorbing different artists on stage. It could be a genre totally different from what I'm interested in, and that's enriching in itself. So it's those things where while I don't have expectations to be successful per se, all of that gives me hope that something is going to come of how I live my life, because I'm constantly enriching myself with some sort of stimuli to, create the composite that I'm proud of.
And again, beautifully said, because that topic doesn't get brought up a lot in the topic of success and what is the quote unquote end goal. And a lot of people from this music scene that we are in, the biggest thing is, yes, there are commercially successful people and millies, joiners, stiz, but a good amount of them, it's their success is, does this help me provide for myself, and does it help me provide for my family? Does this thing that I do enrich in my mind and spirit and body, despite, maybe not a lot of money coming in? And if it does, then you are a success. And there was a tweet from Alchemist where it was if even 10 people listened to your stuff, that's a success, because they acknowledge your existence and they acknowledge your creative spirit. It was something along those lines. And I was like, wow, that's so real, because I do get caught up in the viewership and things like that. We all
do. I do too.
Right. We're in a numbers game world, which like you said, listening to you say that, I'm starting to get in the process of sidestepping it.
Yeah.
Because it's just, and it takes me back to another tweet that my man Zay said. It was fuck the numbers, make the art you love. That it was on that type of thing. So all these pockets of inspiration, all these pockets of motivation, they'll come from people you already talked to. They come from people like that, even you talk to for 5 minutes that you've just met, but they're there. And what you just said very encapsulates all of that. So I thank you for saying that. Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
This is why we podcast, because like I said, this internet archive we're in, podcast can be around 50 years, like even long after I'm gone. You know what I mean?
For sure.
If it's on the internet, it's there.
It's there forever.
Forever.
For better or for worse. You better be
saying.
ready for this to be there for infinity.
Right, exactly. If it's on the internet, it's there forever. But I want to get into a little, I don't want to call it a side quest, but a new venture that you've started. The band, Carousel. We got to give a big shout out to Krithty, J-Vibe, Robbie Rowe, Kat, and John. So where did this idea to start a band come from? And, what does the future hold for Carousel as you go on? Because I've seen some of your performances. I love the cover arts. I love the cover of anything. I'm a big bands cover this song type of person. So, but yeah, I want to know your take on all of this stuff.
Thanks so much. Yeah. The first thing that I want to emphasize and make perfectly clear is that this is a group of people that I've been playing with for years, actually, in an informal presentation. And we've collectively been playing together just for years as well, like 2 years since Beneath My Wings, was just coming out. But I mean, that's to say that we had been performing as like Julian Mendoza and company for an extended period of time. And just for a while, it had been sort of rubbing me the wrong way, sort of having my name labeled this whole group of like wildly talented and individual people, especially because like I'm not even the type of person who like wants to be like the guy like all the time. Like I love taking a back seat and just watching people like play. Like I love just like the songs that I'm not on during our rehearsals, and just like kick back and watching everybody do their thing. And it's like one of those things where I was like, it's time to make a change and just do something that reflects we are a unit and no one of us is ahead of the other. So we got together one day, I guess it was a couple months ago now, and just schemed on possible band names. I had a list of names that actually would be great for potential albums at some point, just because I like the sound of like a word, because it was like a double entendre, or even it just like flowed off the tongue well. And Carousel really stuck. We thought about the idea of I don't know, being cyclical, things going around, coming around.
And like a carousel, there's different types of, in traditional carousel, there's, let's say, animals, but there's still different types of, like, beauty in the carousel. Like,
definitely.
I think of the carousel across the street from Faneuil Hall Marketplace that has, it's very artsy. It's got, like literally, like, all different types of animals. Like, there's a falcon, cow, like, all that stuff. So that's why I feel like carousel works, because while you are all different artists, you still all are on this one ever evolving path.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's how I like to look at it too. Is like
I'm not calling y'all animals, but seats on a ride.
I like that motif. Yeah. We're good with that. But like I have this, ever since we came with that name, I've been thinking back to one of my favorite baby pictures of myself that we actually have in. And when I say I have a favorite baby picture, that's saying something, because nobody likes their baby pictures.
No,
but like this, nobody likes their baby pictures of themselves. But I think this one's kind of funny. Like I was on a carousel rooster, and it's like framed in my parents' house somewhere now. But I keep thinking back to that and how I remember that moment, even though I was like really really young, and just like how freeing it was. But I also thought about just like you were saying, the beauty of the carousel and the different creatures, and it's sort of whimsical, and I like that sort of balance of like what I was saying before. There's some sort of very serious beauty about life and cycles, but there's also like the silly portion where it's fun animals, and it's for kids and families to have a good time. So I think just like that embodied a lot of what we're trying to be with our music, and very random animals. We make a lot of random music, a lot of different sounds. We come from a lot of different backgrounds as different musicians. But
plus, if you ever want to make an album cover for like your debut Carousel album, you got a lot to work with there.
Oh yeah. We have plenty of art. Yeah. We even have an emoji that we can use.
Exactly.
That we have.
Exactly.
So it's worked out well for us thus far, and I'm just thankful that in terms of what's changed since formalizing like a couple months ago, It's just that it's more at the forefront that we want to create something cohesive as a group rather than just be sort of like a backup band for me or for Krithy or for anybody else. We want to, keep that close to our hearts, but we also want to make original music that combines all of these different angles, and that's really exciting because I've never been part of a band before. I've never worked on a full length group project of any sort. And that's sort of where we're headed next. Now that show season has mostly subsided with our last gig at Salem Willows, we're sort of in album mode. And that's sort of the first time I've said that publicly. Yeah. Hopefully the homies don't mind me saying it, out loud here. But we're ready to work and get in the studio, play instruments. I'm going to break the trumpet back out.
Hell yeah.
See what we can do with that, and just have a good time with it.
Because, the music scene we know and love, obviously hip-hop is at the forefront of it, but I love not the underbelly of it, but I love the other stuff. I love, like, the bands and stuff like that, because everyone loves hip-hop, for the most part. Everyone, loves rap. We a lot of us grew up on it. We love it, but we don't talk about the other stuff that we also grew up on. Like, how you mentioned, your music taste is extremely diverse. Mine's is too. I have 5 different playlists, all of different tracks. I have a reggaeton playlist under my Griselda playlist. Like, it's that kind of thing.
Well, my problem is that they're all in one playlist for me. I'm jumping around.
No, I can't. I tried to. I can't. It's like...
I wish I was like you.
I did it when I first started. I was like, I can't. It needs to just be all separate because it's like... It reflects every mood I'm in, and it's like... Do I really want to hear about West Side?
You got things more figured out than I do. That's for sure.
I am so... I guess the word, I'm so like anal about it, where it's like, if like I go back and forth. I'm like, do I put it on this playlist or that playlist? So it's like the song "No More Words" by Extreme. It's like it's on my rock playlist, but it could also be like on my vibes playlist. Yeah. I don't know, fuck. So I just like I'm like I have to be because that's how I can consume music.
Yeah.
But like I said, and Not Bad, Pretty Good. Also, I got to give a special shout out to them. It's so cool to have all these different endeavors wrapped up into one, and like, knowing you and knowing Robbie and J Vibe, it's just so cool to see how the point A to now started and how like you said, and I think it's extremely humbling that you said I didn't want, Julian Mendoza and Co. to be the band's name, because it ain't all about me, Right. And you don't hear that from a lot of people. Not that they're selfish, but it's just not their thinking.
Yeah.
I guess, and I'm not, everybody thinks different. I'm not going to hold them to anything, but it's refreshing to hear, I guess, is the word I will say. And now next, I want to kind of give, a little cutesy time here. I want to give a big shout out to your significant other, Krithy. You know what I mean? I love, I understand Mike Scarfa was a little matchmaker in that regard. So big shout out there.
This is true.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
A lot of love in the room. You know what I mean? So how are you able to complement each other both creatively, being the two awesome creatives that you are, and while you're supporting each other's artistic endeavors and while also making music?
Yeah, we're such a funny pair because our attitudes toward music in a lot of ways are completely different, and so are our skill sets. And obviously on the skill set side of things, that's sort of perfect because I can complement her weaknesses with my strengths and vice versa. But on the other end of the spectrum, in terms of just how we approach music, like it created some problems off the bat, to be honest. I was enamored with her music to begin with, and that's why I sort of reached out from a fan perspective before I even became her friend, let alone her partner. And she had not heard my music for a while until we got going with like a friendship, and still we make very different music, but she by nature, even as like we got closer and closer, it's just like very solitary in terms of her process creating music. She produced herself, like she was starting to engineer herself, and of course she wrote and recorded her vocals, and it's just like because music is so personal to her, right. and
it's very hands-on.
Yeah, very hands-on, and she's very she's very sensitive in a beautiful way. She's a very sensitive person. So anybody who could possibly infringe on her like creative project, like it's prone to hurting her soul a little bit, is sort of how she's framed it. I was sort of like the complete opposite going into this partnership, where I love collaboration. Obviously, we've already talked about it.
Right,
you know, I just love sort of like musical matchmaking and putting people in weird situations where it's like they've never done this genre of music before, but I thought they'd sound really well, like really good here, and just like all of that. Like that's everything that I'm about. So I approached it sort of maybe even naive, and was like, we're gonna make great music together, and it's gonna be awesome. And she was sort of like, hold up there, like this is gonna take some time for me if I am at all enthusiastic about it in the future. Yeah. So I was like, okay, and like it was like a little frustrating for me in certain ways because like I said, I love her music so much, and I think she's boundlessly talented, and I think her voice adds a lot to my music. So.
And real quick, she's a DJ, correct?
She's a DJ too. Wow. Yeah. She really does it all. Yeah. And eventually, we got comfortable with each other as people to the extent where she started letting me in, personally, to an extent that she's hardly let in anybody else before, frankly, and that transitioned to letting me in musically as well, and the process became a lot less stressful for her. We had fewer arguments about the creative process and what would sound good here, all that sort of stuff. So I guess fast forward to now, to make a long story long, we're great, and she's stepping out of her comfort zone now to make an album that heavily involves me after she's helped me with my music for so long, and she's contributed vocals and production to like stuff that I've done. Now I've written or co-written a couple songs on her latest project. She's dabbling in some like alt hip hop vibes where I've helped sculpt that soundscape and develop the flow, and I've coached her in terms of embracing different styles, because talk about a comfort zone. It's like I feel like that. I don't think she'll mind me saying this either. I feel like her weakest attribute as an artist for a while was that she got very comfortable in what she thought was her sound, and she was afraid that she wouldn't be capable to sound good in these other formats. And hopefully I've done a good enough job to sort of encourage her, being like, you're going to sound dope, doing this melodic rap flow or integrating these jazz elements like she's done with some other collaborators. So paired with my sort of like encouragement and just the circle that we've built together in terms of involving like and becoming friends with a whole bunch of great local musicians, it's just for both of our discographies just helped it flourish. And I hope that she is proud of this coming album in a way that she hasn't totally felt before. And that's just how we're both looking at music now, is we have such a great foundation of the people that we know, and the comfort that we've figured out for between ourselves to just like explore new territory.
Absolutely. That's again, very beautifully said. I love that, because I had seen you two got together like that. I'm like, you know what? I love when two creatives come together and really just make a beautiful bond. There's something always magical to be made out of it. So big shout out to her. Big shout out to yourself for doing all that. It's very awesome. I love it. Now I'm gonna kind of get it back to the music a little bit. Everyone's got an inspiration for their music, and I know and understand like you grew up on many different types of music. So who, if there's any voices musically or not, that kind of shaped how you created your music and maybe expressed yourself in your art?
It's such a loaded question, but one I'll try to condense to directly what I do.
Yeah.
You could probably look at me and guess that in terms of like a blueprint that branches out to all the other artists that inspire me, like Outkast is right there.
I was gonna say Andre 3000. I literally was thinking this whole time. I'm like, I wanted to call Carousel like the the class of 3000. Do you remember that show?
Yeah,
I was like, yeah.
the cartoon
I was like, that,
was
yeah,
awesome.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, no, and I say that it's sort of weird because, again, I didn't grow up on a whole lot of hip hop.
Right.
I didn't. Then Outkast is no exception. And to be honest, like I'm not even as well versed in Outkast's music as many other hip hop heads. It's more so what they stand for musically that really got everything going for me in terms of pushing boundaries and being groovy and unabashedly expressive, not afraid to embrace the feminine, all of these different things that separated them from other hip hop artists, especially at the time of their prime. Like that really has resonated with me, and very clearly a whole generation of hip hop artists who are looking to define themselves as, aliens in their own right.
Yeah.
I guess coming from that, direct descendant of Outkast, sort of how I look at him is Smino. He's huge for me in terms of what I do. He's my number one artist year after year in terms of just like who consistently blows me out of the water with their music. And it's just how he uses his voice as an instrument, how he embraces production that integrates polyrhythms and other genres to create like this weird extraterrestrial, futuristic yet soulful and retro soundscape that just like scratches something in my brain.
Yeah.
I can't credit him enough. It's everything else sort of like relates to that vein of thinking in some ways. Like it's always when I voice my influences, it's always the artists who are genre bending in some way. Going back to my roots, like we talked a little bit about before, Miles Davis, huge for me. And, if you're any type of jazz head, you know that Miles Davis was constantly pissing people off by not sticking to the same thing for long. Mm-hmm. He was always, he had like a hip hop fusion album, like toward the end of his career. And he has this quote where he's basically just saying, like everybody's like asking for like the old Miles, like why would I ever like want to do like the same thing over again? Like I already did that. Like very simply, like very direct. And it's like so true. Like I already crossed that bridge. Why would I want to keep doing it? It just gets boring. So Miles Davis was huge. I guess the last one that I'll articulate in any sort of depth is Michael Jackson, because he was, he was my musical muse, period, in terms of just like from a fan standpoint. I started out as a dancer before I ever did music.
Really?
And that's because of Michael Jackson. I was literally like an impersonator. I did like an impersonation of him. His
kick
smooth,
with the,
yeah, I can do everything. Yeah. I can do everything. I still moonwalk in my shows.
Everything,
everything,
you know what I'm saying?
Everything, bro. I memorized like various like choreography start to finish from some of his concerts, performed at like a 5th grade talent show that launched me into local stardom for like a 10-year-old.
Right.
I even got some gigs where I was like dressing up, like going to different events and signing autographs for people.
Whoa.
Like
Okay.
it was really funny.
I like that. Hell
it was
yeah.
really funny. But yeah, no, to this day, it's like he's one of those artists who obviously has aged like fine wine in terms of his discography. You listen to the layers in his music and the sophistication of just him as a vocalist and as a performer, and it just gets better and better the more you
even when he was with his brothers. And I'm talking about like the Jackson 5, but when they were just called the Jacksons. Like that was like when he was a little older, and I was like, because one of my favorite songs by him is, it's not really him, it's the Jacksons, but it's Heartbreak Hotel.
Yeah.
Heartbreak Hotel. Like I'm like, dog, like. And I remember talking about this on episode 100 of Turntable Teacher. It was like, who are like the artists you wish you could go back in time and see? Fortunately now Ozzy is one of them, but it was like Bee Gees and Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
Just unbelievable. Like you watching those performances, I don't care what Taylor Swift does nowadays. You are not touching the king of pop. Beyonce too. It's a whole new level of stardom. And doing all that with no social media, with just word of mouth and advertising, forget about it. We just will never ever see for a million years the type of artist he was.
No.
And granted, it came at a price, of course, as you know, but still just unbelievable. And if you get a chance, he has a movie coming out next year, biopic. I think his nephew is playing him. Go see it. Because I saw the musical in New York, and people don't know this, but I'm a big musical guy. I've actually seen the Temptations musical too. Unbelievable show. Like, I was blown away. I usually don't even say that about a lot of musicals. I do hold them in somewhat high of a standard, but the Michael Jackson musical, just unbelievable. I was like, I've never been that type of guy where it's like, I want to go see this musical. That was the one. I was like, I have to go see this. Just unbelievable stuff.
Hell yeah.
Through and through. Yeah. But I want to get into something that I don't know, a lot of people might not know about you. You're a hooper. My man, come on, you know what I'm saying? You be on the court like
I hope people know by now.
Yeah, I was going to say.
You're going to learn if you don't know by now.
Yeah, hell yeah. You go learn today.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about your experience in the Brodie League. How was that for you?
Man, no, it's just really refreshing to see for people like me. They were custom built for people like me who sort of feel like they missed out a lot on like the earlier part of their hoops career. You know, I started playing organized basketball very late. I was a fan of my brother playing, you know. He had played he's my younger brother, that is. And he was playing since 3rd grade, and he played all the way through high school, and he was really good. And I was watching from the stands for years. Just I think it was like a large part confidence issue on my part, being like cuz I was never like a sporty kid growing up. And even when I started to love basketball, I was like, oh, I'm so behind these people who have been playing since they were like 7 years old that I'm never going to catch up, so I even try. But eventually I just started loving it too much to like avoid it, and I said, fuck it, like I'm going to try out for the team. I tried out my junior year of high school. I was grateful to make JV, and then I worked my ass off. I was on varsity senior year. And you know, I'm now in a rec league, but it's not your average rec league if we're talking about Brodie. Their whole thing is that they are. Y'all better pay me for this, Brodie.
No, literally, come on now,
because I'm really gonna gas you up.
It,
but no, they deserve it. Their whole thing is they're trying to provide the NBA experience for, you know, the everyday basketball player, and that is to say, they have like a full, robust system of stat keeping. They have NBA level media, like literally some like videographers and photographers who have worked at like the G League level are here like taking video and photo highlights and like putting together compilations of these rec teams. Yeah. We got like really great looking jerseys. The team who wins the championship, they get a full table of champagne and the champagne goggles and like a wrestling belt, and like they're pouring champagne on each other outside the gym. Like, They got championship rings. A banner goes up in the rafters, for God's sake. Like it's all those like things that like little cheesy things that you know, they feel good for somebody who has missed out on so much of their life where they wish they could have spent it differently. Like I there's not a day that goes by where I'm like, why did I wait so long to play basketball? Like I so wish that I could go back and enjoy more time with my teammates and just have a formalized setting where I was like competitive, and this is scratching that itch a bit. So it's been really great. My team record has not been, you know, pretty over the past couple of seasons. It's sort of unfortunate there, but you know, another season's
so now I'm super curious. Where is this league out of?
This is in Middleton, which was a pleasant surprise because I live in Danvers right now.
That's right in the North Shore. Yeah,
it's like 9 minutes away from me. Where I live right now, and it's marketed as Brodie Boston or Brodie Beantown. So I thought I'd be making the commute to Boston, which would be fine. But definitely a pleasant surprise.
I was gonna say all the best like courts and stuff, they're way outside of the city. Like they're one of my biggest problems with Boston as a whole is there's not a lot of good. Like, do you remember Basketball City perchance in Boston when it was above? So it was a place. It was right across the street from the Garden on the left. It was where there's a new building there. It used to be it was a parking lot, and then the top floor was this. on each side. I think it had 6 courts on each, so it'd be 12 courts on the thing. It was under this dome. You go in there, you pay like $10 for the day. You could just run infinite sessions all day long.
See, this is what I mean. I missed out on so much.
No, I mean, I would only go there.
Awesome.
It wasn't like a league that I played in, but like if my friends and like were like, we don't want to play on these courts, we want to go play there. We play there, and unfortunately, it's shut down. But it's just good to know that these options exist for like these hoopers, because if you don't know the grind about what it takes to get into NBA, let alone even play at a D1 school, you don't know shit about basketball. Yeah. But it's so beneficial to have these options for these hoopers so they don't lose the love of the game anymore,
For sure.
I won't say lose the love of the game, because if you're a hoops fan, you'll always be a hoops fan, but the love of playing organized hoops and being on a team like that,
I just hate the unavoidability of having peaked in high school if you're like an athlete. It's like people joke about people who like peaked in high school in all sorts of different contexts, but like the unfortunate reality is that so often that's the only like result for athletes, unless you go like to this crazy high level. And it's like, not everybody should be expected to get there, obviously, whether it be by talent or even by like, like some people can't afford to put in that level of work if they're passionate about multiple things. I think if I got like a head start, like I could have gone to like I could have gone
D1 this a little bit.
But who knows if I could have made Beneath My Wings in that time or Daybreak Even in that time. I'm not sure I could. So it's a nice middle ground for somebody who definitely is passionate about it, but just don't have the fortune to have grinded to an NBA level.
Right. Exactly. Because for the longest time, I was like, I'm going to make the league. I didn't even make my freshman league high school. That's a story for another time, though, but that stunk. I do also want to get that you mentioned before we started recording your career in journalism. Because nowadays, and this also relates back to me being a wrestling fan, because journalism to me seems non-existent. The core values of it, I'll say. We are in such a clickbait era now that all the stuff I feel like I was taught in my undergrad went out the window. It's not about being right. It's about being first. And when it comes to wrestling is this, and this is my biggest problem with them. This is why I'm blocked by a lot of so-called wrestling journalists on Twitter. Because they do this thing where, I'm not a journalist. I'm like, okay, let me get this straight. You're not a journalist? Okay. You have sources in the industry. You write about them for a website. Yeah. You get paid to do so. You also have various podcasts where you report these news. You're not a journalist?
That's like me saying I'm not a rapper when I started rapping for like years.
Exactly. Like it's like I don't know if you're trolling. I really don't. But like some of them stand on the business of like, I'm not a journalist. I'm like, shut the fuck up, man. You're
right.
A journalist. It's not even like a bad thing to say. So why would you want that? Because you'd have to adhere of like the journalistic code or like the values of it. It's like, well, you should either way if you're talking about people.
Well, it's a vicious cycle, right? Because people perceive being a journalist is a bad thing to say, because a lot of journalists are not following the right code of ethics, and
a lot of them are under attack, like just
for
politically and stuff like that.
For sure, and even the ones who are doing it right are being framed as following an agenda because they're reporting the truth, and the truth does not matter anymore to some people. So it's one of those things where I'm in 100% agreement with you. If anybody shares something that they learned and they said somebody said it or they observed it themselves, that is a journalistic act at the very least. And just like how I said I used to say like I'm not a rapper even though I wrote raps all the time. It's like if I write lyrics and recite them rhythmically on an instrumental and release it to the world, that makes me a rapper, bro. Right. Like I'm rapping. That is rapping. So it's just one of those things where I hope we don't lose the plot so much with journalism so as to not see why it was here in the first place. Right. And I think it's really hurting us to associate journalism with like being like this dirty word, because it just lumps the rest of everybody trying to do the right thing into the same category where they're constantly going to be discredited. And that has real world impact where it hurts the industry. And like there is like a desert in terms of like the money that's going to journalism, like traditional newspaper journalism or like online publication journalism that are trying to uphold their ethics. It's like they're being punished for it. And
Right.
if like a lot of them are transitioning to either other fields where they can make more money or the dark side where they do some journalistic malpractice and get more money because it generates more revenue. Right. And people know that happens, and that dissuades people from going into the field in the first place. Yeah. So it's like all of these different angles through which, it's not dying, but it's transforming in a lot of ways that are really scary and uncertain. Yes. I'll leave it at that.
And I see it all the time, especially now we're in the AI era where, I mean, we're going to probably see, all these articles written in AI or by an AI programming. So it's odds are going to get worse. But I feel like people who try to avoid the word journalism, they're very, in a way, selfish. It's like, if you like doing this, you're a journalist, in whatever sense you want to pull it. Like, if I get a text tomorrow from an NBA player and I report sources say X, Y, and Z is going to team ABC, I'm a journalist, dude. I'm sorry. That's what it is.
By definition.
By 100%. Definition. And there's really, so like, what do you want to call yourself? You want to call yourself a reporter? Okay, same thing. You want to call yourself a podcaster? In a way, that's the same thing.
People are just scared to stand on business. That's
it really is. And I don't get why. I do kind of want to say it's the attacks of the political media where, you get labeled fake news. You get labeled a liar constantly, even if you're telling the truth. But still, like you said, stand on business.
Yep.
You know the truth.
Yep.
And you need to make people believe you know the truth. When in terms of getting called a liar, probably you shouldn't. But if you know this thing happened to you and you're doing it, you know the truth. You're good, dude.
It's that same attitude of like the idea of performative activism. Like, are you doing this to be like, excuse my language, like masturbate? Are you looking to get yourself off by feeling like a good person?
That's a good.
Or are you like, or are you trying to genuinely do a good thing? Like, are you just trying to do a good thing because people are watching, or are you doing a good thing because you believe it's the right thing to do? And I was grateful to be on a team of journalists who all understood that, early into my career. So it set a foundation for me where it's like I was with a bunch of broke ass people, like sitting in the newsroom working 10 hours a day where they didn't get overtime, and they were just putting their all into it because they knew it was important for their community. And like that's what gets swept under the rug because not only is there this distrust, but obviously they don't have the funding of these other sources or publications or whatever you want to call them that get more attention. These for-profit corporations that can spend money on like ads or whatever. So it's like it's just really, really unfortunate.
It is a mess. It's a mess. But the last question I would want to ask you, and I'm very super, super thankful for all the wisdom you've spit on this podcast. Like I said, this is going to be another podcast that I go back and listen to a lot, just to remind myself of a lot of things and the beauty of how they were said. In relation to your music, what do you hope your listeners carry with them after hearing your music beyond the sound? More importantly, like, what do you want to leave behind when it is all said and done? Might be a loaded question, but that's how we end the night.
It definitely is. What I mean? You know it. I have a really easy answer. I'm thinking if I can say something that sounds less like a cop-out, but at the same time, it's not really a cop-out. I'm done trying to be a messenger and trying to preach. I did that for a lot of years. And I think that came from a place of what I was saying, but all of this connects, man. Like the journalism thing where it's like, I was trying to make myself feel good by being like a teacher and like I had everything figured out. I don't think it's like that, and I don't want my music to be like that. I just hope people take something from it. I want it to catalyze some thought, and I think that's why I speak in poetics sometimes, or abstractly, or I use I'm a very visual songwriter. I'm hoping that it can be interpreted in such a way where it becomes personal to any given listener. I'm grateful that I'm secure enough in myself to not really care whether you understand my story. I think it's nice when people acknowledge it, but it doesn't really go beyond that. I don't need affirmations that people understand like what I'm going through. I don't need to be related to. I'm just sort of putting out there what's been on my mind and what comes natural to express. I don't have a goal, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. So I think the most I can hope for is that people enjoy the listen, first and foremost. But aside from that, just take it upon themselves to think in whatever works best, in whatever way works best for them. And if they come out from a Julian Mendoza listening session being like, I'm looking at any part of my life differently, right, then I not only have won by creating music that I'm proud of, but I've gotten the bonus of affecting somebody else. And that's really it.
Awesome. This episode is the definition of the term "say that." I'm sure, as you heard throughout this whole episode, there's plenty of gems you could take, good people. So if you don't, then listen to it again. And if not, the twice, listen to it 3, 4, 10 different times. Because hands down, this was such an eloquent episode, and I loved it. Julian, thank you so much for coming on. And before we get out of here, what platforms can people follow you on, and where can they find your music?
Sure thing. Well, first and foremost, thanks again for having me on.
Of course.
Supremely grateful,
of course,
for any sort of platform and anybody who cares about what I have to say or think. It really does mean a lot. But in terms of where you can find me, I go by my government name, for better or for worse. I am Julian Mendoza, Julian Mendoza, on all streaming platforms. On Instagram, you can find me at julian.i.mendoza.
As I said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning into this episode. If you enjoyed it as much as I did, please leave a like and comment on this video. And if you're watching or if you're listening on Apple and Spotify, please go to YouTube and do so. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button to help grow this podcast further, as always. You can follow me, as I said at the beginning of this episode, on Instagram. My personal is REPETE617. The Say That page is say_that_pod. And like I had also previously mentioned, I have merch available now. I have shirts, hoodies, hats, and shorts. Come up to me if you see me in public, or if you want to DM me, that's cool too. I would like your size, I would like your color, and I would like what article of clothing you'd like to get. But let's start that support. And I leave every episode at this. And y'all know my drill. Don't say this. Say that. Thank you for the help there. And we will see y'all in the next episode. Peace.